I like it though. It's good.
Okay, good to see everybody. So I'm just going to call our board workshop to order. It's 5:04. And I need a motion to approve the agenda for the April 16th board workshop meeting. So Mary Caitlin, Brian, all in favor? Aye. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Provenzano here so we can get started with our information.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. T, for Google Meeting in to share your presentation. But before we get going, it's a very appropriate time to talk about curriculum work and aligning our resources to MTSS. And that is what Dr. T is going to be talking about tonight. The board had a very specific budget goal that was established in October. And as we move through the budget cycle and into curriculum writing and developing capacity and aligning our curriculum and assessments and Tier 1 instruction, this is a great place to start. So without further ado, Dr. T I'm going to talk about our plan, and feel free to ask questions.
I just want to make sure everybody can see what I'm presenting. Is that there?
It's not in presenter
right.
mode if you care.
I'm gonna move it there right now. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to Google Meet in today. I really appreciate it. And as Superintendent Provenzano said, we are here to talk about our summer curriculum work, which is always ongoing, and I appreciate the board's commitment to making sure that we have the best programming for our children. So just to ground us in our strategic plan, we have made these commitments that our staff will adopt and implement a curriculum that's aligned with New York State standards and design a suite of common assessments to measure student growth. You're going to see that throughout as I'm talking about our projects. And then our district leadership, which includes all of us, has committed to allocating resources. And so again, thank you for doing that. And then I'll get right into it. So these are just the highlights. I believe in the board report that was shared with you on the board docs, there's a list of all of our curriculum projects, but you'll just get an overview here. So I'm not going to read this all to you, but I just want to pull out a few things. So we are doing some significant work in our special education. We need to do vertical alignments. We have a 12-1 to 3-1 program. It now spans grades 6 through 12. And I say 12 plus because, as we know, our students in special education students can stay in high school through 21, and then students in special education actually now, depending on CSC decisions, could stay past that. But we need to make sure that our programming is aligned. So we're working on some vertical alignment, 6 to 12. And then we've done some changes in our ELA curriculum at the high school, which is now impacting also our special class ELA. So we need to make sure that we're aligning our special class scope and sequence with the new curriculum that we have at the high school. I'll pause there. Any questions on that one? All right, then the next one is for health and PE. We are working on our scope and sequence of our health courses, of our health classes, including SEL lessons. And then again, in the special ed world, or potentially students with 504 plans, working on, I apologize. I read applied thinking adaptive, my fault. We're writing applied physical education elective. And so this is really for students who want to potentially pursue a career in physical education or athletics. So it should be great. We're really looking forward to that. And then I'll continue. So here's our humanities work, just a highlight view of where we're working in humanities. So as you know, this was year 1 of our Wit and Wisdom full rollout.
Sorry, we have a quick question here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of
regarding
course.
that pathway.
Yeah, no, I just, I was curious. So with the writing applied physical education, would that be, it would be one class then?
Yeah, so that's an elective high school students could take.
Yep, nope. I just know a lot of students currently that are interested in pursuing that as a career. So very cool.
And as we know, we need teachers, right? So I love it.
That is the truth. That's exciting. Talking about the SEL lessons into the health curriculum, can you talk me through what prompted that switch from moving them to the classroom to the health? How will that still align with what they're doing in class?
Yep. So that's actually going to be a hybrid, Dr. White. We really want to make sure that our SEL curriculum is spanning every part of our K-5 programming, and then eventually our K-12 programming. So you're just going to see just a more cohesive day-to-day alliance of our alignment of our programming, our SEL lessons.
Awesome, thank you.
So, but we did talk about in K2, having it be part of the classroom directly, and then in 3-5, that's where that hybrid comes in, where classroom teachers will be reinforcing the concepts of the SEL curriculum and it being taught in the health classes.
Awesome.
And that's where they need the time.
Thank you, everybody. All right, so on to Wit and Wisdom, if that's okay. So it's year one of our rollout, and with any rollout, there needs to be adjustments with time and scope and sequence and lessons learned in full year one rollout. So we are going to go back and spend a little bit of time to make sure that we can fit our Wit and Wisdom scope and sequence into our 60-minute ELA block for Wit and Wisdom in the K-5 setting. We're also crosswalking it with social studies standards. I know some of you have children in K-5, and so you have seen some of the projects that they're working on, and they really are cross-curricular, which is amazing, and also allows us to look at our standards both in social studies and then you'll see later in science, where we could potentially get some more time in our lives where we're reinforcing students' understanding of social studies and science standards through our Wit and Wisdom curriculum. Okay, and then at 6-8, so this year each of our 6-8 ELA chose a common lit unit to develop, and we are going to lean into that again. So we are doing another common lit unit at our 6-8s. And again, you'll see common formative and summative assessments to go along with those learning experiences.
So will there be 2 in total then that the 6 through 8 will be doing?
That's correct.
Okay.
One of the, I got to do a walkthrough and observe a lesson, and it was really wonderful. The kids were so engaged. It was middle school students talking about going to a dance, but it was grounded in both reading and oral comprehension, questioning, lots of group discussion. It's a really interactive curriculum that pushes higher thinking for our students. 9-12, we're reviewing our curriculum for some courses to make sure we're aligned to standards. So you'll see those courses there. Wonderful courses. I probably would have loved mythology as a child, as a high school student. So excited about those. And then you'll see 9-12. So we are starting to prep for our AP, our AP World and U.S. History. We need to align our assessments with the AP rubric. And then you'll start to see, and I didn't put it here, but you'll start to see that we're going to begin training some of our teachers for AP African American Lit as well through the AP program. And that course wouldn't roll out next year, it would be the following year. We just want to make sure that we were well trained and prepared and ready for that. All right. And then our student support services. So I think you're hearing from Deb in just a minute, but
Tanya, can I ask another question?
of course.
So the AP African American, is it lit or history?
It's AP African American Studies. So it's under the humanity umbrella. It's an elective.
Okay.
So we can decide where that lives.
So it's a hybrid, if you will. It's a class where you're going to be having a humanities, using literature to explore culture.
No, that's great.
It's a beautiful course. And if you remember, this was a student-driven ask, over 100 student signatures. And then when we put it out to the staff to see who would be interested in teaching it, I believe we had 6 people.
And that's
So
what
we're
I was
really
wondering.
excited about that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it would. We had talked about it before. I just wanted to make sure it was the same
Yeah.
course that we were talking
Yep.
about. So thanks.
It is, yeah. All right, and then we move into our student support services work. So we're working on our Tier 1 curriculum lessons aligned to our code of conduct and restorative practices. We're developing our SEL screeners for grades 3 through 12. And then in the world languages department, as you know, there's new standards, right, Dr. White? And so we are continuing to align and update our standards and curriculum in our units, so that scope and sequence. Excited about this one, and I'm sure some of you are too. Technology, we're updating that 7-8 curriculum to include microbit technology. That's very exciting. So don't ask me what that is, but I'm going to find out. The kids will love it. Yeah, sorry, I don't have that answer.
Small ones, though. Very micro.
Tiny bits. But in all seriousness, it's the work that our tech department is doing starting in grades K all the way through 12 is amazing. So with Spark Lab, and then as that's moved up through our middle school and some of the curricular changes that are coming because of the skills our kids are now entering middle school with. So that's where that's being driven from. All right, and then we move on to math. So we've got new exams and new standards. We need to make sure our scope and sequence are aligned there. And again, common assessments. This is how we are going to make sure that our students are on track and we know which standards to go back to. So if you're thinking about that MTSS triangle, this is all tier 1. When you're looking at fidelity of implementation, you've got to have some assessments to measure that on. Our Regents exams are too late. And if you're looking in the K-5 realm, our ELA and math tests are too late. So we really need those common formative assessments in the classroom where we can start talking about student performance and gaps perhaps where we need to revisit.
So this goes back to, I think, a September or October workshop where I think Dr. Moritz asked, how do we know we're going to be successful with this MTSS?
That's right.
And I think this is important to that alignment.
Yep. And I just heard a quote that I loved. Formative assessments without action are actually uninformed assessments. And so we've got to make sure that we're doing these formative assessments and then doing something with the data. We're not going to just test kids to test. So we're very excited to have those across our K-12 units or content areas. And then in science, we have, again, some next gen standards that are coming through. So we need to work on that in chemistry and in physics. And that is all I have for you. It's not all the work we're doing. As I mentioned, there is a comprehensive list that was attached to the board report, but happy to take any questions.
I was going to ask, in terms of assessments, I know I think some are being used now. Do you feel confident there will be an increase next year in terms of the common assessments after they've been
Absolutely.
developed? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as you're aware, we purchased the Panoramas dashboard that will so we made 2 purchases this year. We purchased eDoctrina, which will house all those common formative assessments and allow that data to be imported into Panorama. And from that, then we can see where the gaps are, so like Mr. Clark could pull up his school and see where there are gaps according to a standard. And then he could drill down all the way to the student level, and teachers would have that same access. So that's all going to be part of our rollout plan. So as we're building common assessments and training everyone on Panorama, it's all going to be part of our 3 to 5 year rollout plan with Panorama.
And just to fill another gap in or to make a clear connection, as you've been going to building visits, I know you're going to be talking about building visits in a little bit. Each one of the schools, their student support teams, they're processing and learning how to process data in a similar fashion. So the quality controls are going to be similar. The problem-solving process, which I know Dr. T and Lisa Benson reviewed with you at some point earlier in the year, all of our teams are going through that, and they're going to be using this work to transfer that on in their student support teams.
That's right. Okay. Well, you know how to get a hold of me. So if Superintendent Provenzano, if there's anything else that you or the board need, just let me know, okay?
So just as a side note, I'll make sure that this is in the weekly update along with the list, just so you have it. And if there's questions over the next several weeks, I'll be making a recommendation, is it May? Can't believe it, to have this work approved so we could plan for the summer. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. T.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Sorry, we were just commenting on how Joyce would be happy to see the plan. Okay. Any other comments before we move on? Okay, I think we are.
So yeah, I sort of need to do an agenda adjustment. That's what I was just sort of hand motioning to Deb Miles, our Director of Student Services. The one thing that I'm really proud about these next 2 pieces is these 2 leaders have definitely had many different hands and eyes interacting with these very important documents that are central to how we support students, staff, and our overall community to make sure that we have healthy, safe, and inviting learning environment. So Deb Miles is going to talk to you about the Code of Conduct.
I don't know how important this is, but minus the podium. All right, so
Sorry.
Can we end the Google Meet on the screen? No, it's just like, well, it's just like weird, like this. I'm like,
Well, let's keep
We need
it.
the documents up there too, so we can like, people can
I'm
see
like-
what we're talking about.
yeah, no worries.
Exactly.
You don't like looking at yourself. All right, we all set?
Thank you, Deb.
All right, super. So I'm here really just to talk to you guys about our code of conduct review, which is an annual review of the document. And nicely, since you know we revamped the code of conduct 2 years ago now, it's not a process of necessarily going through the document and wordsmithing as much as it is at this point making sure that our practices are in place that reflect and mirror the code of conduct and the message and spirit of the code of conduct. So some of the work that we have done this year has occurred at both our elementary and secondary cabinets in terms of holding a series of norming activities as part of implementing our code. And we've developed a flow chart of our principal suspensions, a flow chart of our long-term suspension that would go to a superintendent's hearing, an alignment of suspension letters, so working with Tanya and legal to make sure that we're using the right letters when and if we have to suspend students outside of school or on in-school suspension. We've done some work around debriefing incidents, so when there is a large incident or kind of highly emotionally charged incident in a building where maybe a student had to be restrained as a result of becoming physical or emotionally out of control, physically out of control. We're focusing on spending time with those staff members immediately following the incident to reflect on our work and how we can improve, and was there anything that we could have done prior to that to do some more de-escalation. Or if not, then in the process of the restraint, did we adhere to the training and the practices of the restraint so that neither students or staff are injured in any way? And then making sure that we're, learning from that episode for, obviously to ideally eliminate it happening again. Sometimes there's video camera that allows us to kind of reflect on that as well and fine-tune our practices. So doing a little bit of work with the principals around that. That also helps keep incidents from kind of growing their own story in the building, right? Trying to contain what has happened and making sure that, we are processing with the right people. We've done a little bit of work, or some of these are ongoing series, so we'll be doing a little bit more work with our principals on prepping for superintendent hearings in the event that we need to go there. Fortunately, that is a low incident thing in Fairport. We don't really often go to superintendent hearings. There are some situations where we're suspending beyond the 5 days, so that's what's required for that. We are reviewing our due process for students with disabilities or 504s so that if they're in a disciplinary situation that we're making sure that we're doing all the right things regarding their rights as students with a disability. And then we are always ongoing, continually looking at our restorative practices interventions. We did a lot of work after a training almost a year ago now, this year, implementing accountability projects. So when something occurs with students as part of the skill building and teaching aspect of the disciplinary response, we are doing accountability projects. Some of those have included around theft, bullying, use of racialized language, use of gender biased language, substance use, education and support, as well as conflict mediation. So some of that work is happening as a result of students being involved in a certain type of incident. And then we are optimistically looking forward to developing a re-engagement program for those students who are suspended. So while we are constantly looking at how we're doing and responding to behaviors in our buildings and trying to avoid suspension outside of school. We also know that that happens. That's not going to go away entirely. So when that happens, we want to make sure that we're bringing kids back into school in a really thoughtful way. And so we're looking to partner with our teachers union and send some interested and willing teachers to a 3-day community circle building training with partners in restorative initiatives. And then they would come back to the building, and when we would have a situation where a student would be suspended, one of those teachers would pick up the case. They would introduce themselves to the student upon returning, like prior to the student returning. They would hold and facilitate a circle with the trusted adult, the student, the administrator, and then as a result too, they would follow up with the student thereafter to make sure that the student has like a check-in with that person for the next week or two to make sure that they're back in their school schedule and that everything is going well. So we're looking forward to partnering with our teachers on that piece. We have a good cohort that's already been through the 3-day community circle, so I just want to increase the number of staff that would be available to do that. So I also participated, I did not initiate this, but I participated in a process up here at Fairport High School. This is ongoing as well in terms of the cell phone policy or cell phone practices up here at Fairport High School. So Ryan Kuhn, assistant principal at Fairport High School, was charged with holding a committee of parents, students, teachers to come together and talk about cell phone use and or misuse in the school building throughout the school day, the disruption to class or their education. And so that was a great conversation. Had a lot of conversation about the PBIS program and using that to support their work, as well as we discussed the current policies, implications of the current policy. We also gathered information from other area school districts on how things have been going with them and their different types of policies. And in addition to that, we sent out surveys to parents, students, and staff of grades 9 through 12.
The response was incredible.
Yeah, we had an increased response, so great participation, and we're going to come back to the next meeting to review the actual information that they shared, and what their feelings are around how strict we want to be with a policy.
So what is the hope for rollout for that? Are you hoping for next year to have something in place to start off the school year?
Yeah, ideally, I mean, I had shared with them. So it's an interesting conversation, right? Obviously, it's super challenging, right? You don't want to get in power struggles with kids over cell phones in your classroom. Some classrooms, it runs very smoothly. They have the shoe rack holders where you can put your cell phone on the way in. Some teachers offer sort of a reward, if you will, for like a bonus homework if it's been in the, cell phone pocket for, whatever, the quarter. And then in some classrooms, it's a little bit more challenging. So we had great conversations about how we can support those teachers that maybe struggle a little bit more with holding kind of to the line of what the classroom policy is, and getting support from administration and so forth to be consistent in our practices and in our delivery of how we're managing that across the board in your classroom, so that you know how it goes, right?
That was one of the biggest takeaways, is there was interest in developing a thoughtful plan, but there was inconsistencies right now in how it was being managed, and I think that creates a lot of gaps in the lives of school members.
Yeah, so to your point, kicking off in September when our seniors are going to go on, we're not taking the phones away from our seniors, and really my conversation to them was really putting on my behavioral hat of how do you work any behavior. So to me, cell phone misuse in your classroom is no different than plagiarism or any other behavior in your classroom. You have to be consistent. You have to apply the rules that you all agreed to as a community in your classroom. And when that doesn't work, then you have to reach out to your administrators immediately. The longer you let something go on, just as we all know as parents, the more challenging it gets. We also had a conversation about, as a faculty, you have to decide, where do you stand on this as a group? Because if we go into dad's class and we can have it out, and then we go into mom's class and we can't, we know what that's like at home also, right? Kids are very good at, manipulating the situation. So September, when we kick off the conversation, after we delve into these surveys a little bit, we need to come out nice and firm about what our stance is, where cell phones belong, when you're allowed to use them, and then we have to adhere to that.
And going off of the work at the high school, I think that one thing that I would love, I wonder about is if there is a chance to have a conversation about this at the middle school, phones at the middle school level, because I know right now it's K to 8, broken up K8, 9, 12. I'm back going really weirdly here. K8, 9, 12, K8, no phones, 9, 12, this policy. And I wonder, I don't know if that really tracks with meeting, I don't know if that really meets the kids in life where they are. So I just wonder if there's a way to systematically working with school with this to kind of.
We're systematically, it does get a little bit more progressive as you go K5, 6, 8.
Yeah.
But in the code of conduct right now, it's K8.
So
I believe.
K5, they're not allowed to have their phones at all. They have to be in their cubbies, their lockers. 6, 8, they can have their phones on them. They cannot be turned on or used unless given permission in the cafeteria or so forth.
My mistake.
And then 9, 12, they can have their phones on. They have freedom to have them in the hallways, in the cafeteria. And then it's up to the classroom teacher if there is an opportunity to use them in the classroom. And there is always opportunities, right? There's sometimes really logistical reasons for kids to have their phones out if they don't have their Chromebook. Or our teacher is allowing them to listen to some music while they're doing their work, all of those types of things.
They're doing a scavenger hunt.
So there's realities for use of them when it's agreed upon by the teacher. So it's just making sure that that's where we are with it.
And I think that is really a nuance. I know we're not going into details, but real nuanced way to look at it, because it is something that's going to be in their lives forever. So teaching them how to use it successfully is awesome. I love that approach.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. Doesn't really help us to take them away, because the minute they walk out our door, they're kind of glued to them. Yeah. So that work is ongoing. And then our wellness committee this year probably was more active than ever in recent years. But we did some work around some New York State legislation, as well as that totally connected to the code of conduct in terms of providing safe spaces in our schools for all students. And so we did some work around transgender, gender expansive updates that came out from NYSED last spring. And then Liz Russell, our social worker up here at the high school, as well as Kelly Weishar, our community liaison, both went out to all of the faculty meetings and presented at all the faculty meetings to the teachers about any of the changes in terminology and the areas in which we need to be thinking about and considering as safe places, and how to support those students in their decisions.
I just want to highlight and say thank you to the Wellness Committee, because as the policy committee, we have a lot of policy work that does come through you guys, and you guys give us such nuanced, wonderful information and lens, like our wellness policy last year that you guys updated. So from a member of the policy committee, thank you.
You're welcome. So one of the things that came to us in doing that work was there's always, and I'm somewhat connected to this from the registration process as well, it's always a little bit of a challenge for students to understand, how to go about the process of either changing their name within the school database system or changing their gender. So we created a frequently asked questions document that speaks to many of the implications with that and the things they need to be aware of. So that's New York State Ed language, right? It doesn't really extend outside of schools to the real world. So there's all sorts of information in there about legal name changes through the court system, or name changes with parents' guidance through the school system that goes into school tool. And then what are the implications for a college application process and all of that. So I won't go into.
I was going to say the college application and financial aid stuff
Yes.
was very,
Don't match.
right.
Yeah, because they still live in the world of social security numbers and IDs and so forth. So colleges are getting, they're coming along with
Catching up.
us in that they're allowing students to place 2 names on their application. So to help with the tracking of documents back to high school, as well as be able to put their preferred name. So it's great. Let's see. We did work on the board we didn't work on the board policy per se, but we sent that to you guys because you're working on that board policy connected to that piece.
We'll be asking for regulations.
And then, so the other piece that we did when we talk about how do we know things are working and that how do we measure the work we're doing around restorative practices. So we have created, at this point, 2 surveys, one more to be created, to survey students, parents, and administrators after a disciplinary situation of a higher level. So if it's a major incident where a student is suspended from school, then they will receive a survey that will ask them questions about were they respected, did they feel like the incident was fully investigated and that they were heard, were there any consequences, were there any restorative practice interventions and so forth. So we really want to get their perspective on how they think the situation was managed, as well as the parents' perspective, and then of course the administrator's perspective. So we're working to pull that together to start out in September as well.
Deb, can I ask a quick question about that? Is that from the point of view of the person who went through the process or the person who might have been the target of the offense?
It's the point of view of the person who committed the violation.
Okay.
So the student who committed the violation, their parent, and the administrator that was involved.
Is there any consideration of the person who might have been offended to know how they felt throughout the process?
That's
I
that's
certainly can look
intuitively
at that.
built
Yeah.
into that process. And I would also say there has to be 2 willing parties with that too. I mean, we want to engage the offender and the one who is offended, if you will.
Yeah.
And sometimes we see that they're just in different places.
They very well might be, yes.
But I think that's the right way to do it. And Deb knows it better than I do. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I
No, you're
apologize.
fine.
But
No, I mean, thank you. We hadn't really thought of that per se. We'd have to pick the questions carefully because one of the biggest complaints that comes out of any disciplinary situation from the victim is not knowing what's happening on the other side. And they
Yes.
still won't be able to know
Oh, yeah,
what's
'cause you can't
happening
tell
on the
them
other
this-
side.
yeah.
So,
But do they feel heard? Do they
But
feel like
that's-
they were given an
that's the
opportunity?
did they feel
piece.
Yeah.
respected?
Yes.
Did they also get supports? You
That's
know,
the
all of those
natural
things would
piece
be
of it,
super
though,
good
that
things
happens.
to check in on for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, like a
Especially 'cause
follow-up
I-
survey for that too.
Yeah.
And I know that there's such that balancing act of, you hear so often kids say, well, there was no consequence, there was no punishment per se, there was nothing, or all they had to do was blank. And realizing that, of course, yes, absolutely, privacy needs to be protected, but you at least want that person to have felt heard. And that they felt supported in their own way, and understanding that maybe you can't know details, but the school has looked out for them.
It might be an interest, if you propose that as a way to monitor the success of the program too. So it might be interesting to find out, like a week or 2 later, after the person is back in school, has the behavior changed, So for the person who was maybe being bullied, for example, are you still being bullied? Like checking back in and seeing how it works.
Being close to the
perspective.
buildings and knowing if there is a sensitive issue that occurs that's of this type of nature, it's again, naturally built in. You check in with students, you create safety plans for students. We have, behavior intervention team meetings on incidents that occurred to make sure that we're taking a look at all of our mirrors, from those who were offended to those who did the offense, making sure that they're safe and comfortable without getting into the nuances of, hey, this is what happened. That's just the work of the administrators and our staff who are directly related with situations. They do it actually very well.
Right. But thank you for the suggestion. We'll definitely look into that.
Lisa, did you have a question?
Or I just felt like there was a mismatch. 'Cause I feel like, Deb was saying they're creating a survey to make sure that that natural process is happening and get feedback on it. So we were just saying like surveys from both sides. So like absolutely the work is happening, but to track it from both sides.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and
like,
the nuance is the discipline piece. So yes, I agree that that could be something you can explore. But the nuance piece of, what happened? What was the disposition?
Just-
That's what can't happen.
And I was just curious what the return rate is on the surveys.
We haven't done that yet. That's
Oh,
kicking off.
okay.
That's
Oh,
kicking
to
off in
be-
September.
okay, got it.
Yeah. So we'll do that come September, starting out the school year with any incident that occurs. But yes, to your point, yes, we want to have data for both sides. So, all right, and then finally, we are taking a look at our extracurricular eligibility standards that have not been reviewed for a significant amount of time. So it was interesting when we pulled those up. I mean, we were using them. Fritz is still using them, of course, with his coaching staff and so forth. He does his parent meetings that kick off each sports season. They are embedded in the what's the software we're using? Parents that have to sign
It's like
up for
student
kids.
ID or something.
Yeah,
Yes, it's
no,
student ID.
Student ID.
Yeah.
It's for sports, you have to
yeah.
sign off on it, but the kids don't necessarily see it. Which
Right,
is
so
Fam-
you
it's
go all the
family
way
ID.
down through.
Family ID.
Family
Yeah.
ID.
Yeah,
Hey, ding,
family
ding,
ID,
ding, ding.
thank you. The parent signs the student up, right? And then you scroll all the way down through after you answer all the tons of medical questions. You get to the little checkbox and you sign and you go on, right? So it's really just making sure that when we've gone to our electronic places that we haven't lost the opportunity to, review this with kids. And so I know coaches and club advisors are doing that. The challenges with clubs are that clubs can kind of be transient and that kids, kind of come and go from clubs depending on their busy schedules. But we're going to be tightening that up a bit. And then when we pulled the blue sheet eligibility, it was very reminiscent of our old code of conduct, right? So it was this is what you don't do, and this long laundry list of, illicit drugs and substances and so forth. So really lifting some language out of the code of conduct to replace some of that the other piece with it was very much about drug and alcohol infractions, and then as it worked its way down through, this is what some of the members pointed out, as it worked its way down through, it then got to behavior, and then it got to academics, and then it got to attendance. And as you went down through, those topics got really short, and so we just wanted to do some reprioritization of, we're doing a lot of effort right now on attendance. We know attendance connects to academics also. Academics connects to athletics and participation and so forth. So just doing some reordering there and making sure the message is clear what our district philosophy is around all of that stuff.
And I know Deb, I was not at that meeting, sad, but Nicole filled me in. And I think communication for coaches in terms of not just maybe academics, but other things that are happening for students was mentioned, which I think just makes sense. So I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. Yep. I think that's it. So in terms of the actual code of conduct documents, Lindsay Reddick is working with us just to change some of the basics with the dates and the message from the superintendent, and then we're ready to go.
So with that, there's going to be a timeline. If there aren't any more questions, I'm sorry, I apologize. Are there any more questions for Deb? I shared in our weekly update a timeline of the district-wide code of conduct. There's a specific timeline that the state outlines. Today was the actual presentation of the things that we're moving forward with, we're recommending. There's going to be a 30-day public comment period starting tomorrow through May 20th, right? And so we'll put a notice out to families and to the community. They'll have an opportunity to email the district clerk or share information. They'll be able to come on May 28th to the Board of Education meeting, and that is a later meeting. But nonetheless, they're going to have open public hearing comments, and then we're going to have some time between May 28th and June 18th to confirm it, right? So if things pop up that we need to shift or change, we get substantive feedback. We don't want to rush that immediately. So that's on June 18th, they'll be making a recommendation as we move through the process. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I'm not going to guess what's next.
District-wide safety plan is next. Yeah, there you go, Sam, coming forward. So I put into the administrative content, Luke, you got to refresh it, Sam's PowerPoint presentation, just so the board has a reference, a consistent reference. For some reason, I'm not getting a live link, but maybe as I move in and out of it. So as everybody knows, Sam Farina, as we,
Good afternoon, everybody. So I just say next for the next slide? Is that all?
we could do that. We could definitely do it. I just want to make sure we get to that slide because I know you
Okay.
shared that with me earlier.
I kind of like how Tanya had it set up where she's there and she's got everything set up.
I know.
Now
it's
you have to look at
just
me in
fancy.
person, sorry.
Yeah, for some reason it's not popping up, but if you put it in the browser, Luke, you should be able to, there it is. Thank you. Just go to that second slide or open one. Yep,
It's okay. It looks good.
there you go. Looks beautiful. Well, wrong one.
There you
Just
go.
gotta scroll down. Oh, we got it. There
I'll
you
just
go.
go through.
Delete.
All right, so good evening. Thanks for having me. This is my third time presenting the plan to the board. I've been here now 2 years, so since I've been here, I really have to offer thanks to the superintendent, Matt Stevens and Doug Loff for helping me, aiding me, ensuring I get the quality people that I think is important that we have here as Centuries. That is really the foundation of the safety plan. So that's worth noting. And Deb Miles has been a great partner. Her and I are pretty much attached at the hip, day in and day out, dealing with
I thought
a
I was,
cadre
Deb. I
of
thought it was me. Wait.
school issues and student
Yeah,
issues.
I'm out.
So all good though. We work it out every day. So is that what they call it? All right. So as you all know, much of the premise and the philosophy with creating this program really comes from the mitigation, prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. So that's how it's formatted, this plan, and it's pretty standardized throughout New York State, and it's a requirement, as you know, of New York each year to have this plan revised and presented to the public for comment and ultimately to bring it to you for your ultimate approval. As part of that plan, we also go through a number of internal controls and input as far as the district-wide safety team. We've met 3 times so far this year. We also have the emergency response team that we're meeting monthly on. We talk about our plan and how we can make it better. I'm also coordinating with Deb Miles and Becky Short, who really have the institutional knowledge here for the district, and use them as our experts to kind of make sure I stay in line with the academic needs of the district as we go through this plan. And also our centuries, that we now have 43 centuries. And I don't want to scare you with that number because it's not 43 full-time positions. All right, it's 43 people that I have at my disposal to use on a per diem basis to address the security needs and the Sentry and Guardian needs for our district. I'm blessed with finding those that have a great expertise on communication, de-escalation tools, and can relate well with people as they do their job of security. So blessed to have those folks with us, and it's a great part of making this program successful through our plan.
So I just want to, you're 100% correct, and they had so much credibility, and the positive interactions are great to see. So thank you for sharing and pointing that out. This district-wide safety team and the emergency response team, what's the difference between those two entities?
So the district-wide safety team is folks representing all aspects of our district, from the union, from different disciplines here in the district that allow us all to come together and talk about safety and security concerns that have been brought up, and we can weigh in with each other and get a different perspective from all the different folks from within the district, a good representation. The emergency response team is really built on principals, assistant principals, and people that are going to be part of that emergency team to implement certain aspects of it if we're in a crisis situation. And we also talk about how we can better manage different situations throughout the district. So that's the distinct difference. And we meet much more often on the emergency response team. I do a lot of updates where we are, case studies, do some tabletop exercises as well, get people in that mindset of how to deal with crisis as it comes about.
So I guess if there's an opportunity for blind spots to be exposed or to talk about, practices, these two bodies are pretty significant in that process.
Absolutely, and they are the guiding body that brings information to me that I can help manage it through our plan and kind of look at our security procedures and make sure that we're on spot with where we want to be. So very quickly, as far as our summary of the updates, I've kind of laid it out in your policy. You'll see obviously the changes are in red that we've added or we've revised certain aspects of it. But to go through this fairly quickly, we've added special events as a security function for our sentries. That's noted more. It's identified them as a key component to that security feature. We've also talked about the need for threat assessment fundamentals. So we're doing training. So if you look at our training requirements for sentries, we're talking about mental health awareness, we're talking about de-escalation, we're talking about therapeutic behavioral management, we're also talking about threat assessment fundamentals. So there's that wide array of training that we want to ensure our folks are prepared with to deal with anything that may come their way. The same thing with item 2 here. As you look up, therapeutic behavioral management is really a mental health resource. We've added that to hoping that our counselors and mental health folks are more engaged in that. We really believe in that model, that management. It talks about how to deal with folks in emotional crisis, talks about how to deal with folks that maybe are doing things deliberately, and there's different aspects in how to do that. Ultimately, it's verbal, but there is an opportunity if you go a bit further, if we ever have to do anything from a passive restraint or a hold or to help a student that's in crisis to manage that situation, there's a set standards and requirements that we have to do in order to do that. Thankfully, that doesn't happen that often.
Sam, how many people have gone through that training?
For our sentries, all our full-time folks have gone through that. And then we have probably about 50% of those that are part-time or per diem that have gone through it as well.
Our mental health staff are also fully trained in that, as well as our building level administrators.
We've added, for item 3, we've added some mass communication using the InformaCast. That allows us, we have those that are populated in our system that need to know information quickly. I can just press a button, I can get information out real time of what's going on. We recently used that when we lost power at JP. We used that as a way to keep people up to speed on what's going on when we were doing evacuations from one school to the other. And so we also do, if we have a fire drill or we have a fire alarm, to get information out quickly to everybody in the district, let everyone know what's going on. So this is something that we're trying to use more and more as our mass communication effort. So I added that into the policy as well. Another thing that we've added to our ability to kind of manage and process our threat assessments and our suicidal threats or suicide assessments is this software program called CLPS. We call it CLIPS. It's really a management software that allows us to record, track, and manage situations that have come to our attention from a threat assessment standpoint or a suicide assessment standpoint. This way, we don't lose people through the cracks. We keep people engaged from our side with whether it's mental health counselors or whether it's myself and key members from the administration on threat assessments, so we don't lose any of that ability to manage those situations. Further, we've also added a paragraph on managing situations when administrators use TBM and managing that crisis situation so that not everybody is focusing on the TBM situation, but there's management outside that by the administrator there. It's almost, we're going to get more into like this incident command mindset, giving people tasks in a situation so not everybody's gravitating towards the chaos itself if it's there, but managing there out. We've also added the formalized threat assessment process to the plan, which is really fairly elaborate, that talks about if you get a threat assessment, once you get it, what needs to happen, how it's processed, who's contacted, what types of intervention techniques you can use, and how it's managed from there. So it gets pretty in-depth, but it's about an 8-page document, but it's something now that's the national standard that's being used across the country that has been endorsed by the Secret Service, and it has evidence-based research that backs this process. So that's been included in our plan. A requirement from the state is we add a special events and athletic security plan. So anytime we have a big elaborate event, we've been doing this anyways, It's now formalized in a process, not only with our security aspect of it, but with the athletic director. And in the event of a medical need, we have a medical protocol with AEDs and that type of thing because of what's recently happened in Buffalo, the Buffalo Bills, that has now become statutory here in New York.
We
Learned about those AEDs at buildings and grounds and how they have to be checked very frequently.
Yes,
So
they're-
very thankful for the team making sure those are ready.
They're actually checked daily to make sure they're operational. So hopefully you're not still seeing them in there. I think we got most of them out. So
Yeah.
those are extras, but we're adding more. Yeah. We did, because of the new state requirement, add a workplace violence prevention program policy that's been added to the plan as well, so that that is now also an important aspect of it. And we are going to be using CLPS, the same software I talked about for a threat assessment. We're going to be using that to manage our workplace violence investigations as well as our DASA investigations going down the road. So everything will be in one place, and it will be much easier to manage that type of information in one central location.
Have we had, sorry, clarification? I know we're still working through the workplace violence prevention program. So from my understanding, when it was put in place, it's really meant for workplace violence between employees. In educational settings, we have the unique circumstances of we also serve students and children. Have they clarified anything along those lines of what that looks like for our educators in that piece? And, if there was an incident with a student, do we have further information on what that looks like?
I'm going to oversimplify this a little bit, but what we're seeing is trending in the education side is that if you have a student on staff, that's workplace violence. Student on student is not.
Okay.
That will still fall back to our code of conduct and, if necessary, threat assessment if needed, or if it's between parent, staff member, or staff member, staff member. So that's all workplace violence related.
Student issues separate.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
No, that was perfect.
Okay.
Fine. That's
All
good.
right.
Thank you.
I try not to oversimplify, but sometimes
No,
I
that's
do.
perfect.
So that's a work in progress. Doug and I have been working quite a bit on that, and I think the next aspect of that is getting into agency-wide training, which we're kind of working on in that vein right now. So the philosophy here with our plan is really school safety and security is not only just my responsibility, Century's responsibility, but really everybody in the district's responsibility. And so we are very much constantly reminding our folks, see something, say something. And I'll tell you what, Deb and I were talking about this today, is that, we're seeing a lot of people that have, not only students, but staff members that are really stepping up. If they see something suspicious, bringing it to our attention quickly. And we've seen kind of almost like an uptick when it comes to that. And we've been really appreciative of the fact that people are taking an interest in ensuring that if there's something suspicious not right, they're letting us know, and we're doing our due diligence to ensure that we address it. So that's been very good, but it still need to continue that see something, say something message.
Do you think that's a cultural shift in your guys' opinion? So you guys have really created this wonderful team and you respond very quickly. So do you think it is that cultural shift that people are seeing there's a fast response and can get supports, so they're more likely to share it?
I'd like to think so, and I think people are seeing that when information is brought to our attention, action's immediate. I mean, it doesn't even matter what time of the day or night. I mean, we're acting on that.
Or the day of the week.
Or the day of the week, correct. So we've been, as
Yep.
simple as something on Sunday. So that came to our attention and we acted quickly on. So we've been blessed, and I think it is a cultural change and for the good. And I think it's a result of our work to get things moving quickly and not letting things sit for a while. So I think people are seeing that as a positive.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is I think it's a shift in society too, right? Unfortunately, many things are happening across our country that are alarming, and so the more that is publicized on the media, the more that you come to find out that there were warning signs, things could have been prevented. People are getting a little bit more astute to that and being cognizant about communicating.
And that's really the importance of our plan, is the prevention, right? And if absent the prevention aspect of it, we don't want to be reactive. I know we have security measures in place, and it's needed, but our push and our emphasis and our cultural shift is to prevention, and I think that's becoming more and more apparent. And we really are, this is one of the things I talked about when I first got here, is just the need to reject that it can't happen here paradigm, just to kind of remove that whole thinking. We don't want it to happen here, but we can't have that thought of, well, that could never happen here in Fairport. So we kind of move in that direction to ensure that it won't. Just so very quickly, just some quick security enhancements. I just talked about CPLS application. It's been working out very well for us. We're kind of in the beta test phase of this, but effective next year we'll be fully immersed into that. And we're seeing some really positive results of being able to manage that from a single location when we talk about threat assessment. We'll be looking to do some video upgrades next year, some additions, replacements. I just want to share with you right now we have 340 cameras that do over 640 views around the district, which is good. Seems like a lot, but every time we run into something, it doesn't seem like it's enough because there's always those spots that we can't seem to catch. But on the most part, I think we've been very good about managing the video system. We are working to upgrade that system in the operation room right now with an additional server because we've kind of overwhelmed the current system with the number of video we have on it. But we're moving to make that happen fairly soon. I can tell you the Ops Center has been very successful. It's being used more and more. I don't think a day goes by without it being used 3 or 4 times to look at video, archive video, and find out what's going on. We found things like reckless drivers. We've solved some hit and run MVAs with our video system, damage to school property, eloping students, missing property. Just as recent as a couple weeks ago, the operator in the Ops Center was just casually monitoring the system and watched 2 individuals, and I don't want to get too much into the detail here, but 2 individuals were actually stealing from other kids' backpacks, and we actually saw that in progress and intercepted that and returned all the property back to the students. So it's been very, very effective in regard to that. And it's also been very effective with as recent as somebody coming on our property with a car driving around Dudley in a very reckless fashion. We were able to use that technology to find a plate number and identify who that was. So it's been working out real well. We're proud of it. Can't wait to expand it further down the road. We are looking to ultimately, with some funding, working with Aaron and Matt on this down the road, is a rear desk for the high school so that we can better manage the folks coming in and out the back entrance there. We have a workup on that, just a matter of getting some funding for that. I'm hoping to start researching some bus videos so that we can get a real-time video if needed through our operations center to integrate that into our system. And we've also been working with the Workplace Violence Prevention Program. Part of that is an evaluation of each building, which has actually been very good for me because now I have a really good view of where the security vulnerabilities are or the concerns are. So Aaron and I and Matt and Doug are all working on that down the road to find out where we can better strategically look at trying to change that, those things that have been brought to our attention. So all in all, it's been working out very well with this plan being really a useful plan, not just something that's stored on the shelf. And I'm hoping that you see the value in having that as well. And I, at this point, really, if there's any questions about the plan itself, be happy to answer.
If there are no questions, just like the code of conduct, beginning tomorrow, there'll be a 30-day public comment period where we will communicate to the community to be able to respond and share comments to Board Clerk Sarah Driscoll, and then we'll have a open public comment period or hearing on the 28th, just like the code of conduct, before the meeting starts, and give people an opportunity to talk and process it. And that will give us time through June 18th. If there are substantive findings or tweaks, we'll definitely have those ready to go on June 18th to make recommendation for board approval. And we'll be able to submit this by September 1st, which is the state deadline. And I have to tell you, board, thank you so much for dedicating resources because Peter, we've had to grow into this moment, right? I mean, there were times when we were getting this document when Deb was doing special ed and student services and safety. We were getting this done probably in December at times. And, you know, we deserve better, and you guys all realize that. And we appreciate the resources dedicated and what the expertise both of you bring to these respective positions. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick, real quick thing. Deb, you reminded me when you were talking about just prevention and threat assessment. I attended and I know this wasn't directly related to safety, this was more Liz Russell and behavioral health, but I attended the QPR training about a month or so ago. It was the suicide prevention training. And I think what was a wonderful takeaway was not only the amount of parents that attended, but the amount of teachers from our district that attended. And I think anything that we can do to normalize the conversation and to give our teachers the supports and the sentences and the questions and the things to say to support them in difficult conversations. I think it just, again, shows that, you know, we can manage the safety of all of our students from all directions. So
And,
it was
and
great.
Liz offered up that training for our sentries, which I'm going to take her up on
Yeah.
as another means to try to deal with de-escalation and that type of thing.
So just another plug for that. It was really well done. So
Thank you. Yeah, that came through our partnership with URMC.
Very
We've done
good.
Now for several years.
Mhm.
And Liz and Tori both have been now trained to be trainers.
That's great.
So we can turnkey that more quickly as well.
And in a more practical sense, you had a parent forum, you know, how to talk to teens, right? So, I mean, putting it all together, so.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say thank you. So I know there's a lot of time, energy. Like you said, it's not a 9 to 5 or 9 to 3. It's every day of the week, so.
Keep saying.
I think the only thing I would add to, Sam and my partnership is the behavior intervention team is the place where we really dive into the threat assessment and the self-harm. And, you know, those teams are really generally meant for significant concerns, but we really process literally everything in those meetings that even administrators or counselors have concerns about. We move them from Fridays to Mondays very intentionally. And it has proven to be very effective because coming off of a weekend and coming back in the school building after things have happened out in our community, we get firsthand knowledge from Sam and a partnership with Monroe County Sheriff's and Tom Thurston in terms of events that have happened in the community that certainly can come back into school and continue there. So just that partnership has been excellent. We are way ahead of the situations that could come from some of these behaviors, way ahead of it in terms of being proactive and getting supports and resources in place for families.
And thank you to your teams, that the relationships, I know we're gonna go into our building visits, but the relationships we see with our centuries in the buildings when we get to visit, when you talk prevention and support, I mean, that's the gold standard. They know what's happening before anyone, really, they're in it. So I'm very grateful for them.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's up to you. I mean, well, what does the board want to move to, the budget or the building visits? What do you think is more pertinent, just in case you get stuck on one? Just want to.
I think we can do the building visits
Yeah.
in 8 minutes.
So, yep, that was so what my thought, just wanted to share out and have the opportunity, because I know that it's hard for all of us to be at every single school visit. So just wanted to share out what we've seen, and we've been very busy with school visits over the past 2 months, and that's why we felt like it would be a nice time to kind of just talk about each one briefly. And since we have allotted about 15 minutes for this, I was thinking maybe we could spend about 5 minutes on each building, and those of us who were at that building, we can share kind of our experiences, any highlights, and then move on to the next one. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, so we had technically 5. Some are in the same buildings, but we visited buildings and grounds. We visited with the tech folks. We visited with Minerva DeLand, Joanna Perrin, and Jefferson Ave. So I was just going to kick it off probably with buildings and grounds, and those of us that were there, anything you want to share with the rest of the board members that may have not been able to be there would be lovely.
I think I can jump in. I think particularly as we go through the budget process, we see so in depth all of the different aspects of the school day and what it takes to be successful. So I think it's awesome when we get to go on these visits and you're really like, oh yeah, no, somebody is there handling when there's the power outage in the middle of the night or the water main breaks, and how do you fill in. Mr. Smith was kind enough to show us his the cleaners schedules and the gaps that they still have trying to fill positions and how they're still able to make everything function, even facing those challenges. So getting to see that, it's just very impressive to keep it going.
Yeah, all the moving parts, all the elements that are happening on a daily basis for sure. I think, when we're looking at budgets and things that schools and departments and just areas need, like buildings and grounds or our tech folks, we get to see where maybe it's lacking and in need of some additional support as well. So we were able to see in the garage different things that they are using. A lot of it is quite outdated. So it helps us, I think, understand why we're talking about we need to, get a new vehicle, for example.
Storage.
And storage,
The
for
storage
example.
component, I feel like, really jumps out
Yeah.
when you're there.
So it was one of my favorite visits. It always is. Anyone else on buildings and grounds?
I'm going to just put the slight plug in that I think we try to fit a lot in on that morning
Oh,
with
that was-
building and
that was
grounds
a
and
lot.
technology, and I think it would be nice to give buildings and grounds and technology their due, and
I think it
have
was
a
because
day
we
for
had to
Minerva and a day for buildings
JP
and
because
grounds
we had
and
to cancel the
technology.
Minerva.
And JP, I think I would like to give every place its due. So
That was
would
because
be
we had
my
to cancel the
that would be
Minerva, right?
my slight ask. I know it was unintentional because again, the canceling and rescheduling, but they really were so wonderfully prepared for us, and they were very excited to
You
have
can come
us.
tomorrow, they'll still be ready for it.
I know I know he's like, oh gosh, now they're
No,
going to
but
come
I
back.
know, and we started talking with Tom and technology, and then we had to
Yes,
pivot.
I think
and
Tom
go.
got
Yeah.
a little shortchanged.
Yeah.
So, and they have a lot to add, and especially with the new website, I think. So,
Yeah,
That'd be
so
my only plug.
moving on to this tech area of the same building. Does anybody want to share just kind of our experience there? I can say I'm always amazed at how some of our computers that students use and other forms of
Are well loved.
are well loved. So again, talking about budgets, why is there a need to do upgrades and support things that are broken? We get to see that firsthand. But anyone else? And yes, I was going to say the same thing, Jan. We did have a lot packed into a short amount of time. So, hopefully next year we won't have as many things in one day. But does anybody else want to comment on the tech area?
Just always exciting. They were talking about the space they're going to reutilize and creating different shelving options so that they have more workspace when they have to reformat, or fix all the things they do with the computer. So it was pretty cool.
Okay. So after we did that visit, we walked across the parking lot and we went to Minerva DeLand, which visiting schools again is always one of the best parts of being on the school board. So we were greeted and had a short presentation, and we had some student, tour guides or ambassadors that were able to share their kind of experiences and lead us around the building so we could observe actual classes taking place and ask questions along the way. I'm not going to keep talking, so those of you that were there, feel free to share. I would say seeing lots of discourse taking place.
A lot.
A lot.
of discourse.
And I was thrilled, and then I'll stop talking, I promise, the biology and the hands-on and the things that they're doing along those lines that we see in the short videos we hear, but to actually see it in action is wonderful.
I got to go into Mr. Young and Mr. Sana's algebra. What were they? Was it an algebra class?
Yeah.
And it was just incredible. And I was going to say the word discourse because just the amount of discourse and collaboration was just really exciting, and just the relationships between teachers and their students, was really fantastic.
It is.
Part of the presentation that I really appreciated after we had our tour, they were talking about how much sensory breaks they put into their day. And as a mom of a kiddo on the spectrum, I totally appreciate that. And it's not even special needs kids that need this, but it's all kids that need that break to get up, to walk around, helps them focus and come back to the class and do their best. So I appreciate them working that into their daily schedule.
I do
And I
agree.
think,
Oh,
as like a piggyback on Mr. Farina's presentation today too, that was partially possible because of the centuries that they have, where they're able to open up more space on campus during lunchtime, for example, because they have those extra bodies, and like not just bodies, but really capable people who are able to facilitate that. So I appreciate that aspect too.
And I think they mentioned that they actually can go outside when it's not below zero or torrentially raining. They do try to get outside every day for recess, or I guess not recess, lunch, which hadn't happened in the past. So
Yeah, being able to do that, and also trying to encourage teachers to get kids up and moving in the classroom, and that pairs of the discourse. It was just kind of a holistic approach of where are all the places we can get students up and moving around. So I love that too.
I think that's something important we don't always talk about with our visits. We get so excited about the kids and the tours, but the administrators always are sharing what's happening with their goals in the building and how that aligns to our goals that we put forth at the beginning of the year. So I'm always appreciative that the administrators lay that out for us so we can see what's living in the building.
You said very intentionally discourse. You didn't say critical thinking. You said discourse, and I think, but that.
But yeah. Well, and that's the learning path this year, right? So we're getting to see that. We're privileged to see that happening in the classroom and living what our teachers are building those skills with our students.
Because it doesn't make, and I think this is a board ask, it doesn't make much sense if it just lives in our documents. And I hope that you're seeing like the PBIS is the Raider.
The Raider way.
And that's happening in all of our buildings.
And I think every building, if we're moving on to JP, I'm assuming since Erica was buzzing in there. But the one thing that has been every single visit that we've done in every classroom building at least has talked about the MTSS, which as for someone like me who was not part of that decision-making process to put that in place, but gets to see it this year, every building has such great things to say about how that's working and how they feel like they're empowered to be able to support their students. And that's, another one where it's not just living in the documents, it's happening and everyone's really excited about it. And especially, complimentary toward Lisa Benson and the work that she's doing. So that's been neat to see how consistent that message is across the district.
So moving on to JP. Yes. Yes, they absolutely did. And again, we were greeted and had a great conversation with both Casey and with Pat Crow. And then we also had a number of students that escorted us around the building. So my big conversation was actually in PE. And there's been a shift a little bit that they are doing co-ed now classes. So it was interesting to get perspectives from both students, teachers, everybody, and it sounds like it is going well. I know for me it was strange that it wasn't co-ed for many years because we are in elementary, we are in high school, and the districts I've worked in, middle school was too, and I know there probably were some adjustment periods and probably still are, but it was nice to talk to the teachers and the students about that. And of course, the tech wing is amazing. So
I love the fact they were doing karaoke in the lunchroom. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. They were very intentional about when they were talking with us about, these are not elementary kids, but they're not high schoolers, and hitting that. And I'm a former middle school teacher, so I just get so excited seeing that age group, and they're just awesome.
yeah. And we were able to talk actually a little bit about some of the books that we've seen come through that we've approved or we've read because we've just wanted to as a board. So we got to hear some of the discussions that students were having in some of the, I think it was 8th and 7th grade classrooms about books that they are loving and some that they're not as fond of. So it was great to have those conversations with both the teachers and students.
Hitting JA.
Yep. Okay, moving on. So just last week, it feels like a really long time. I think it was last week. Yeah, Friday.
4 days ago.
4 days
5
ago, we were able to visit at Jefferson Ave, and it was again great to meet with staff, administrators, and talk with teachers and see students in action. But I know that I think most of us were there, so feel free to share just what you maybe stuck out for you.
An intersection is technology and partnering with our elementary schools because the state testing is rolling out on computers this year. And Mr. Charno was sharing and Ms. Busby were sharing about how tech has been very intentional that the schools are not testing on the same day so that tech can be in the buildings ready to support teachers, students, all the computers, because if it's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong on that day. I mean, we've all used computers. So it's just how well planned and thought out this conversation is about making that shift. And we'd be remiss if we didn't celebrate Freya, who shared the amazing video that her and her mom partnered to make about Songkran, Thailand's New Year. And the celebration and just her leadership and sharing it with her whole school. It was really, really awesome.
Well, and I think also we all received these wonderful
Yes.
letters from the students that I know we each received just some of their important.
Heartwarming.
Sure, I brought it.
I did.
did.
No, and I just really want to say thank you to the kiddos for advocating for their school and for what their kids need and
Dairy-free milk.
Dairy-free milk. We're gonna work on it. Their writing is just exceptional, and their descriptions of our hardworking school, our exceptional school, our fun-loving school. It's just obvious how much Ryan and Amy, but all of our principals just love their school and are just so excited.
Yeah,
to
the joy
showcase
is
it.
palpable.
Yeah, the joy, exactly.
And I know we need to move on, but I am just going to say, we said it at the beginning, the consistency among the elementary schools that we've visited so far, both with PBIS and, like you were saying, the reading curriculum. And I know that folks that maybe were, trying to get used to it last year, many of them did approach us and say that they were feeling much more confident teaching the different modules this year. And we also talked with Ryan and Amy about the fact that there's things outside the classrooms for the lessons that all the kids in that grade are doing, and that they're seeing the kids within classes talking about, hey, we did this book, we did this activity. So those common experiences. So that's big for me. I'm excited that it's increasing partnership with not only teachers and grade levels, but also with students.
It was funny because I went into a second grade JA classroom and they were talking about their wit and wisdom, what they were working on. And my second grader brought it home today that she had been working on this week. And I was like, oh, look at that. Like, it was just really exciting. And Dudley, JA, and it doesn't matter where they are. They're getting that same experience. So it was just
So that's,
awesome.
in my mind, that's the work of the board. It starts with your expectations. And then you have Dr. T and the team of directors. They do a great job organizing it, bring it to the buildings, and our staff, highly dedicated and committed to build capacity around it and employ it. So you really see those threads. And I hope that you're starting to see your work translating in the classroom. So thank you.
I was gonna ask.
I got to pop into Mrs. McCafferty's room, and it was just as exciting as what her students detailed on the Golden Apple Award. So, they had earned a choice day, and it was a big deal. They got to write on their spelling test with any type of writing utensil. And when I tell you the joy about writing on your spelling test with a rainbow crayon, like that was, so she just clearly brings a lot of joy to learning because they were working hard but having fun.
Yep. Professionalism, joy, and lots of class.
Yeah.
Okay, so now more fun. Mr. Stevens, I see you approaching us.
All right.
He has a favorite chair up there.
He does.
Yeah, he does.
Are there different ones?
Let's see here.
They're a little touchy.
So I shared some information. If you don't, do you have it all in front of you, or do you need the handout? Or perfect. So we're going to talk a little bit about, before we go through the full budget presentation tonight, for the proposed adopted budget for 24-25. If we remember back at the last presentation, we still had a gap in terms of revenue expenses to address, to come to a balanced budget. As you know, schools in New York State have to present a balanced budget, meaning the expense side has to balance the revenue and fund balance reserve side of the budget in terms of that piece. So as we're still waiting for actual numbers related to the state budget, I believe they have an extender through Thursday. There's a conceptual agreement, but we haven't seen any state aid runs as a school district as of yet. So we're working off of the governor's proposal as it relates primarily to the foundation aid piece, right? Because the expense-based aids proposed to fund per formulas, there was nothing related to, why do I have this here? There was nothing related to changing the formulas in the executive budget proposal for those pieces. So those we have the numbers to work off of and project for next year. So as we are still waiting the foundation aid numbers, we anticipate they should come in a little bit higher than what we currently see. But again, foundation aid has already been fully phased in. So as it relates to any increases, we don't anticipate any large increase similar to what we've seen in previous years, I guess, so to speak, in that process. So some of the different options that we look at are expenses throughout the budget and any revenue projections, as well as our fund balance and reserve usage for the following year. So kind of a combination of all those different pieces to help us come to the balanced budget for next year. So whether there's some pieces of reducing some proposed increases in expenses for next year, some pieces of projecting a little bit more revenue than originally anticipated, all of which simply will play into year-end projections in 24-25. Really, that's where these impacts will come into play at the end of that year for next year's budget in terms of any expense versus revenue actuals that come in throughout next year. So a couple of the big highlights, and we'll see this when we go through the budget presentation, but just to highlight a few things. We have some one-time revenues coming in 23-24. Finally settled through the process was our FEMA reimbursement related to COVID expenses. So assigning some more fund balance next year on a one-time basis for that revenue that's coming in. And then because of that, reducing our reserve allocation. Again, we were going up before $1.5 million, which again, fund balance and reserve, that means we now have to rely on that for future years. So without those funds, the funds will last, projected out into the future a little bit, but it increases our reliance on those pieces to fill that revenue gap within the budget. So trying to balance that out, thinking about a long-range planning as well. Sales tax, we've eased out of the pandemic. We had an anticipated reduction in sales tax revenue many years ago, and we've seen the numbers come in a little bit higher. So again, we're recognizing a little bit more of the revenue. It's not actually increasing our actual revenues, it's just recognizing the revenue we're projecting on those pieces. And then again, you can see some expenses throughout the budget within our equipment lines, contractual expense. Actually, one of the key pieces is we had a goal of trying to increase our building repair project line to approximately 1% of budget, which would have brought us to about $1.6 million in that line, actually staying flat, which has us around $1.26 million remaining in that line. So that just means we have to make decisions, prioritize throughout the year in terms of what things we can do as a district, and then also try to line that up with any capital projects that we can try to maximize aid on, building aid on. So that's that piece there as well. So any questions, without going through line by line in terms of closing the budget gap that we had? Again, we had $1 million to close, and it's done a mix between the expenses and revenues and fund balance reserves.
Just thank you for this detailed outline. I'm very appreciative. I know we talk a lot about it, but seeing this as we come out of March and into approving today, I was very appreciative.
Great, sure. You're welcome.
having a budget adopted by the governor, which, by the way, we don't have the numbers, we have a general framework, and there still seems to be some debate upon that after further review. We're in a good place with how we've adjusted these pieces to move us through if there are changes in revenue from the state.
Yep, so here's basically, if there is an additional foundation aid we'd receive, like let's say the number is $100,000 higher than projected. Right now, we're relying on the fund balance reserve, so it'll actually just reduce our reliance on that fund balance reserve piece. It really, we could either project 100,000 more in state aid and show that number higher now for next year and less in the assigned fund balance, or vice versa, have it in the assigned fund balance because we know we have those funds, and keep the state aid piece where we know it is today with the governor's executive proposal. So it really isn't going to change the overall budget plan for next year, only if there's additional funds. It's really no different than projections themselves. If projections come in higher or lower than anticipated, it then will fall into how much of fund balance or reserves do we actually have to rely on at the end of the year for next year. So that's the key piece. So, you know, I don't see it changing anything because of where we are with the assigned fund balance, assigned reserve piece as a whole for next year.
Thanks, Matt. Whoa, these are very
I didn't think that was
interesting.
going to be possible. You guys are showing a lot of restraint. I mean, you have questions?
I already know it's coming.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I know, I think you've done such a nice job doing a comprehensive review many times with us. Okay, so we are going to break and then we'll be back in about 30 minutes for our board business meeting. How's that, better? So I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Mary Caitlin, Jan, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so we're going to stop with our live stream and we will resume at 7 p.m.